morning, everyone, and welcome to Cornerstone Commentary presented by University of Kentucky Federal Credit Union, where the first Thursday of every month, we invite people on and I get asked them silly questions. My name is Ben. I am your director of fun and games for the morning. I'm joined by my pink and bearded co-host again, Nathan Stevens. Nathan, how are you doing today?
Doing well. Thank you very much.
Good. And today we're joined by someone who has way better things to do with his life than talk to me. Ladies and gentlemen, Pete Hines. Pete, how are you doing today?
I'm great. I got nothing better to do than talk to the both of you right now. Thanks for having me on.
At a 10 a.m. on a Thursday morning, mind you.
Perfect timing.
So, Pete, we obviously know who you are, but for the folks at home, give them a little introduction of who you are and what you're about.
My name is Pete Hines. I'm the Senior Vice President of Global Marketing and Communications at Bethesda Softworks. We are a video game publisher. We develop and publish video games for a whole bunch of platforms. I've been at the company for 21 and a half years. And we just got bought by Xbox the other day, and that was something.
Cool. Good to know. 21 years. I feel like 21 years at any company is a big deal, but like 21 years at Bethesda is such a big and important thing. I want to ask, because you jotted it down in the Google Doc that we have for notes. It says you're a board and card game enthusiast. I got to ask, what do you play and like what's your favorites?
Well, I'm a huge Magic fan. I have my wife built cabinets in our kitchen just so I could store at least some of my ridiculous Magic the Gathering stuff. The rest of it is all stacked in the closet. It's back here it's everywhere. Obviously, I'm also a fan of, we did a card game called Elder Scrolls Legends that I worked on a lot. I'm playing a lot of Slay the Spire right now, which is a little different. I don't know if you know that one. It's a fun little PvE deck builder, but I if it's a card game, I will try it. Nice.
Okay. I saw that note and I was like, I have to ask, as someone who's also into board and card games. I'm a huge fan of that. So
nice.
I want to kind of give us your backstory on growing up and stuff like that, and how you how does one end up at Bethesda, essentially is what I'm asking.
I wouldn't recommend my route. I'm not sure how I got here. I wouldn't recommend anybody else try it. I jumped around a bunch. My dad is actually, my dad's family's from Kentucky. He was born and raised in Louisville. We jumped around a lot when I was younger, and long story short, I ended up at Wake Forest University, which was really my sort of breakthrough moment. I'm not sure why they let me in or how I got in, but I got in and had a chance when I was at Wake Forest to really get to experience a lot of different things. So I did everything from, I was the color commentator for a season for women's basketball radio broadcasts. I was a DJ. I was a computer lab manager. I was a research assistant in the business department. I worked in sports information, so I used to keep stats for basketball and football games and help write media guides. So I just did a little bit of everything, and that was sort of the early foundation for understanding how lots of different things sort of come together in an approach for what we call marketing or PR or community. But my background was always, well, these things are all kind of the same thing and just different ways of doing them. And so when I came to Bethesda in 1999, they hired me to be the director of marketing and PR, but I was the whole department. Like I had an artist, but I did everything else. So I did PR and all of our brand stuff. I ran all of our events. I ran our community. I ran our forums. But it was second nature to me because I was used to wearing a lot of hats and doing a lot of things. And so we've grown from that small company that was probably, Bethesda was 20 people when I joined.
Wow.
Or something ridiculous, 25. We fit in one little hallway in the building that we now occupy. And now we're 2,500, 2,800 people around the world and a whole bunch of studios and offices. And it's been a pretty incredible ride to watch the company grow and to be able to help and participate in that.
Geez, that's insane in so many ways, because I feel like in every college class I've ever had, it's always been like, just do everything you can and kind of become a jack of all trades. So it's nice to see that it does work out every now and then if you are a jack of all trades. So I'm glad to hear that you're doing all right for the most part, it seems.
Well, look, the important thing about that, Ben, is not that necessarily being a jack of all trades in terms of that's what you do every day or you're responsible for, but it's more about understanding how those things can fit together cohesively, right? Because a lot of what I do is looking for middle ground or ways to make things happen, right? Marketing has some great idea for a thing they want to do, a trailer they want to make, and dev says, all of our global lighting is broken right now and you can't capture from the build because, right? So it's trying to find like, okay, well, the choices then are nothing or everything. Like, well, what if we did something else in between? Or what, you know what I mean? Like it's going back and trying to understand everybody's wants and everybody's challenges and figuring out a way to make stuff happen. Well, what if we did it this way? Like, oh yeah, we could do that. So I think that's the real value in that jack of all trades. It's just understanding how a lot of different things can bring something to the table in any given situation.
Yeah, no, I mean that makes total sense. I do want to double back, and you mentioned it before we started the stream. We'll let you have your moment as a Wake Forest fan and roast Kentucky for a little bit. So
go Deeks.
There it is. I had to let that out of the way.
We miss you, Olivier.
Oh, that's just right to the gut too.
Oh, jeez.
We could get into this. It's fine, but we're not.
No, it's okay.
I just want to let you have the space. It's totally okay. So
we've got a question in the audience already.
Okay.
They want to know who your favorite Arsenal player is and why you started following Arsenal in general.
I think my favorite Arsenal player of all time is Thierry Henry, who I got to meet once for a Doom event that we did and got to nerd out with him in person about how he was my favorite. Because if you don't know, I played soccer since like I could walk. My dad was into soccer and taught me at an early age, and I still play. So I'm a huge soccer fan. My reason for following Arsenal is terrible, which is after I graduated, I went on a starving student tour of Europe with a good friend of mine from college. And while we were in the UK, I'm getting a football jersey to commemorate the trip, and I picked the Arsenal one because it was the coolest looking and became seriously, that's my amazing criteria.
That's okay. I am a Philadelphia Flyers sports fan because I like the color orange at first. So, and now I suffer.
But once I support you, I'm all in. So I have been living and dying with the Gooners for 30 plus years now.
Same. A long time. Nice. That is long. I've only been a Flyers fan for 10 years, but it's been a lot of suffering. So
Ben, let's be honest. You haven't been alive for 30 years, right?
23.
Okay. 23. So you were alive when I joined Bethesda, because whenever I talk to somebody who wasn't alive when I joined this company, it's just a knife right to the heart. So at least I know you were around. That does help.
Got that going for me.
The first time I felt old is when I made a Dragon's Lair reference in the class and nobody knew what a laser disc was.
Nobody had a clue what you were talking about?
No clue. And I was like, all dogs go to heaven guy. That's who made that. And they were like, oh, yeah. You're all scarred by that. That's...
Well, I hope you all enjoyed the Old Man podcast today. Had to get that jab in there too.
So we've got another one. Sienna in the chat says, where does someone who is fresh out of college start in trying to get a marketing or social media career in the video game industry going?
It's a very good question. Sienna, did you say her name was Sienna?
It is. Yes.
Very good question, Sienna, and one I get asked a lot. So first of all, the thing I want folks to understand is usually when people think about, hey, I want to get a job in the video game industry, they tend to only think about the dev side. But just keep in mind, if there's a discipline, it's probably related to video games in some way. Finance, QA, human resources, legal, like all of those same basic business functions exist at every game company. So you don't have to be an artist or a programmer to work in the industry. Sienna's question was about marketing. One of the things that I have always said to folks over the years is, look, this is a really competitive industry and it's hard to get into. And your chance of getting a spot is directly proportional to the amount of effort you're willing to put in to make that happen. So one end of the spectrum is, well, I'm applying for all of the jobs that I see that I think might fit my skills and abilities or what I want to do, which is great. I'm not discouraging you. I'm just saying somewhere out there, somebody else is doing more than that. They are signing up to beta test for different companies who are looking for help and feedback testing their product. And not only are they testing it, but they're following what the developers are asking for and giving really good feedback and detailed notes. Or when they find a bug, they write up really good notes on how to reproduce the issue so that the developers can reproduce it and fix it. Or they volunteer to moderate forums, or they work on things like mods, or there's any number of ways that without anything other than your time and effort, you have the ability to reach out to people who are already in the industry who are looking for some amount of help. And you never know what can happen once you get in those positions. I have the global community lead for Bethesda Game Studios is a woman that we hired into my department from QA. The woman who's now the studio head at Bethesda Game Studios Rockville came to us. She was like a producer on the QA team, and Angela Browder is now the head of our studio. Like, you never know. Look at Phil Spencer, who's the head of Xbox. Like, his inroad into Microsoft was not showing up as an executive. He came in on the ground floor and worked his way up. So it's really about how much effort are you willing to put in, and time are you willing to put in to distinguish yourself from everybody else who's saying, oh, I want to work in the game industry too. Well, I only have so many jobs. There's only so many jobs in this industry. So you got to put in a little effort and be a little creative in figuring out ways to get yourself in front of the kind of folks you want to work for, so they can see you and go, hey, that person is really smart or really helpful or really on it. And hey, we have this position that's come available, and would you be interested in taking it? We've hired any number of people from our communities in that way for that same reason. So that would be my best advice, Sienna, which is, if you really want to do it, start looking for those ways in which you can get yourself involved with nothing other than just volunteering some time in various ways.
Very cool.
Yeah, no, that's great advice for just anyone, not just Sienna, but anyone in the games industry wanting to get in.
For sure.
I want to ask, since you're basically, in my mind at least, second in command at Bethesda, what does a day-to-day look like? And let me phrase that: a day-to-day in a normal non-pandemic world look like?
Well, it's been over a year since I had one of those. So my job is super all over the place. I have a team of 55 plus folks in my team in Rockville. Maryland is our headquarters, and my team comprises brand managers, PR, community, content creators, so folks that write articles or help us come up with videos that we want to do talking about our games, paid media, research, CRM, marketing, art, video. So I have a lot of different groups and leads for those groups. And then we have global marketing offices. And so I divide my time between working with our teams on what's going on, and hey, we did a big thing for Elder Scrolls Online yesterday. Hey, take a look at the script for this, or we have the first cut of the video, and giving some feedback. I'm mostly the guardrails for my department, which is, I don't spend a lot of time saying we should do X, because we have game teams that do that. I spend more of my time sort of making sure that things are staying on track, and then being involved across the whole publishing organization for a lot of other things, sort of strategically. What are our priorities? One of the things that any developer will tell you is no game is getting developed faster right now, like not one. Even if you were already at home, it's probably going slower, whether because of bandwidth issues or whatever. And certainly for our teams, that's the case. And so, you're constantly having to reevaluate and adjust your timelines and expectations, because nobody is working as efficiently as when we're all in the office together. As well as, again, with last month's news about the deal closing with Microsoft and formally becoming a part of Xbox family. Well, as Phil said, that we're just now getting started with what that looks like. And so I'm spending a lot of time right now figuring out sort of well, what are things that we're doing that we could borrow from your expertise? Or, is there research you've done around some issue that, like, hey, we'd love to take a look at that? Or just a million things like that right now that we're trying to find ways to either things that we have that we can share with them, or that they have or have done that they can share with us. But it's all over the place.
Mm-hmm. That's good that you're this early on into the partnership, though, when you're able to kind of work, like, immediately right off the bat, get started working together on these just simple things of, hey, what does it look like to work on a day-to-day basis with us now as we're separated by 6 feet or, across the country in a sense. So that's really nice that you're kind of already clicking.
And the nice thing is that the Xbox folks have been amazing in terms of giving us the distance and space. It's one thing to say, well, we want Bethesda to still be Bethesda, but then, if the next day you're getting 45 emails saying I need this and I need that, well, it doesn't exactly feel like that. But they've sort of been the opposite, which is to say, hey, look, here's some meetings that you might want to sit in on in case you're interested. But they also recognize that we're drinking from the fire hose over here right now, and so they're pretty good about saying, look, we're here when you need help, or if there's stuff that we need to talk about. Our fiscal year, like, this doesn't seem like a big thing, but our fiscal year just changed by 6 months, which doesn't sound like a big deal. But if you're used to January through December and you suddenly pivot to July through June, holy shit, that's a lot of work to to wrangle all of that work together, to suddenly reforecast everything you thought you had already finished all over again under a new reality. And now I have to remember that Q2 is now October, November, December instead of April, May, June. I mean, simple stuff like that, like, oh, this is coming out in Q2. Like, that's not coming out in May. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. Oh, wait, Q2 in Microsoft. So don't ask me about what quarter a game is coming out right now, because I still haven't gotten that entirely straight.
Oh, man, that was our next question, too. That's no, I'm kidding. Somebody in the audience was concerned. They wanted to know how Todd was doing.
He's just fine. Thank you for asking.
I
will tell him you said hello.
I like how we make it sound like he's a pet, or he's like living in the basement of his house. Like, they're just next door neighbors casually. So, oh gosh. Goodness,
he's fine. That's
doing great.
Look, I appreciate anybody who's concerned with anybody else's health or well-being these days. Like, a little kindness and concern for each other is certainly welcome.
Always fair. I kind of want to ask, if possible, if you remember, because I know for some people it's a little bit blurry in their life stories, but what was the moment that you decided that you wanted to work in the games industry? Like, what was the one defining thing that you can think of?
This isn't going to be some major eye-opening revelation. It's going to be kind of stupid.
That's okay. Most people's are like something simple.
You asked the question. So I worked for the American College of Cardiology while I was going to MBA school. I did. When I left, I was the assistant director of communications. And after I got my MBA, I decided I was ready for a next step up, and took a director of marketing job at the American Association of Blood Banks. And it did not take very long for me to realize, like, blood banking was not something that I was passionate about. I probably didn't even need to tell you that. You probably could have guessed that yourself. And so I was not there very long. I was still working for the Adrenaline Vault, by the way, Nathan, if you remember the Adrenaline Vault.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, way back in the early days of the internet. So I started poking around a little bit to see, like, what else was out there. And I saw a job listing on Bethesda website that I thought was interesting. So I sent in an email. And a gentleman by the name of Todd Vaughn emailed me back and said, hey, that position that actually was filled, but would love to talk to you about coming here and sort of combining your multiple jobs into one and being our director of PR and marketing. And I was like, hell yeah, I'll do that. And so went over, interviewed with Todd and the president of Bethesda, Vlaco, and they hired me. I took the exact same salary I had at AABB. Like, I didn't even get me the hell out of here. They're like, well, this is, and I was like, you can't do more. And they're like, this is all we could do. I was like, fine, I'll take it, whatever. Just get me out of here. So it was more just like serendipity. And by the way, Todd Vaughn is still at Bethesda. He's our senior vice president of development. He oversees development across all of our studios and is still a very close friend of mine. So it's funny how life works out sometimes. But again, it was one of those things where that probably doesn't happen if I hadn't, while doing all of this stuff, MBA school and my full-time job, I hadn't taken this gig writing for a game site on the side and doing reviews and, going to E3s and interviewing folks. Because it gave me another insight into the industry and how things worked, and which PR folks worked with me that I thought were great and which ones I thought were clueless and terrible at it, and informing, using that to inform how I thought, I should do PR. And it just sort of lucked out.
Nice. That's an impressive story. So remember, folks at home, you could go from working for a blood company to working at Bethesda right now.
It's a proper path.
Give it a shot.
Always.
All right. So we've got another question in the chat, and this might be a loaded question.
They're all loaded.
This is pretty loaded because I was thinking it was simple. What is your favorite Elder Scrolls or Fallout feature?
It is for me. It is always the go wherever and do whatever thing. Like that is always the part of what that studio has done that I have enjoyed the most. The number of hours that I have spent. People will tell you, once you ship a game that you've worked on for years, and God only knows how many times I had to play and demo Morrowind, Oblivion, Skyrim for various audiences, it can suck out a lot of sort of that excitement and passion for a game coming out. Not for Elder Scrolls and Fallout, not for me. I'd go home and play for 200 hours, 250 hours, 300 hours. And it was fun because I could just do all kinds of stuff that I knew I had never done before. And almost always it was just, I'm going to go wander around and see what's up. Like for Fallout 76, I spent the better part of a year just exploring that entire map and finding every little location that our designers had created, these interesting little sort of, emergent gameplay moments where you stumble across a campfire and somebody's left a note and you're sort of putting together what must have happened here. I think that is super fun and interesting, knowing our devs and how much time and thought and creativity they pour into those things. I love doing that just as much as I love sort of playing through a story or a quest, because I don't know. It's just sort of entirely up to me as to what the story of the game is going to be that day, because that's the way they built it. They just throw all these things in and go, okay, it's up to you. Whatever's going to happen next is in your hands. I do love that.
Open world narratives are always fun like that. That's okay. So we had another question that they know that you won't answer, but we're gonna get it out of the way so we can just mark it off the list. Are we getting a Fallout remake, remaster, or new Fallout game?
I don't talk about things that we haven't announced. Not in Twitch chat, not on Twitter. That's not how we choose to announce things. If you bump into me on the street, I'm not going to suddenly tell you what our plans are for any given franchise. When we're ready to talk about it, we'll let you know.
There you go.
You heard it here first, folks. He's not going to talk about it. So I do want to. I want to talk about. I do want to talk about Fallout because I'm a huge Fallout fan.
Okay.
My first question. And Nathan's going to blow a gasket because I'm actually going to ask this.
Oh, my God. Don't do this.
I'm doing this.
Okay.
When can I expect my contract in the mail about signing to be the Vault Boy mascot? I have the hair. I'll stand in the Bethesda studio. Like I'll stand in the front office and greet people and shake their hand. I'll wear the suit. I have the suit. What's it going to take?
I give you credit, Ben. I've been doing interviews for 21 and a half years, and that's the first time I've ever gotten that question. I don't have a good answer. I am super happy to tell you I am not in charge of real life Vault Boy auditions. So I will figure out whose area that is and get right back to you.
Good to know. You have my email, so I'll do it. I'll just stand in the front office and shake hands and tell everyone they look great and wear the suit and everything. And Nathan hates me for it.
We'll put you right next to the Mr. Gutsy. We still have our robotic animatronic Mr. Gutsy from E3 that talks and moves around. So you can just stand next to him in the lobby and welcome people as they come in.
I will gladly do that. Nathan,
once we're actually back in the office and people are doing that again.
Of course.
Got more gray hair from that question. Thank you very much, Ben.
I had to ask that because when I first met Nathan 2 years ago, he was like, you know who you look like? And I'm like, no. And he's wearing a Vault Boy shirt. And he just points at it. And that's what everyone sees me as now. And it's just like this label. So, and the running joke was, we're going to interview Pete Hines one day. And I was like, we're never going to do that. He's like, you're going to ask him that. I'm like, I'm never going to do that. And then Nathan calls me 2 weeks ago. I was like, hey, you got to get ready. And I'm like, what's happening? And he's like, you're not even Pete Hines. And I was like, oh boy, here we go. So
check it off the bucket list.
Had to get my shot in. So, but talking about actual Fallout, kind of just that kind of branches out. What's been your favorite game in your time at Bethesda? And I know 21 years is a long time. What's been your favorite game to work with and help with?
I don't think I have just one, because when you're in a position like mine where you work on literally every game that launches, that's a pretty unique situation, because well, if you're at Bethesda Game Studios, well, it's pretty likely you didn't have much or anything to do with Dishonored or Doom Eternal or whatever it might be, but I work on absolutely everything, and so in some ways they become your kids, and like picking a favorite launch is like trying to pick a favorite kid. Now I can tell you I have some least favorite kids, because they didn't go so great and weren't super fun, but much like a good dad, I would never name my least favorite kids. I just won't hurt anybody's feeling by naming my favorite. I have really fond memories across the board on so many things, whether it's Morrowind and the size team that we had back then. It was me and a marketing artist, and I had an administrative assistant, but that was the whole department to execute a global marketing campaign for a PC Xbox game, with a team that was probably 30 people at launch. Like, that was a massive undertaking. But then what Oblivion did in terms of resetting people's expectations around next gen, or working on Doom game that we put out in 2016 after a massive reboot in that studio of what they wanted a Doom game to be, and seeing how amazing that game was. Dishonored, like Prey, Evil Within, like all of them have sort of special moments and memories for me in their own way.
Nice. Can I ask then, what's been the like wildest or wackiest marketing and/or PR stunt you've done for a game?
That is actually a tough question, because I actually am not a huge fan of wild or wacky. Like, I have never been a big stunt marketing person. I sort of lean more into like, let's do things that are don't get me wrong, different or clever or whatever, but not like stunty or wacky. But we've done a couple of things for Fallout. Since you mentioned Fallout, for Fallout 3, I was a big fan of the comic Penny Arcade, and had been reading them for years, and loved the idea of getting them to do a special comic for us where they told whatever story they wanted in the Fallout universe. And they ended up telling a story about a vault experiment that was one man and a crate of puppets, and a guy that slowly descends into madness, and he and his Vault Boy puppet go out and essentially go on a murderous rampage. So then we went to PAX, and we did this giant booth for Fallout 3, and one side of the booth was sort of pre-war, so it was all clean and pristine, and we had era appropriate mannequins with clothing and stuff, and we had an Airstream in there that we had tricked out with a demo of the game inside, and a fridge that had Nuka-Cola, and we made the TV look like a Radiation King. It was amazing. But the other half of the booth was post-war, so it was all burnt and nuked out, and like the other half of the Airstream was all burnt and scorched. And we gave away, amongst other things, I really wanted to do the puppet from the comic at the convention, and you can find it still. You can go on YouTube at some of their like at the finals for the big event they do, and they're playing music, and there's footage of the crowd, and there's like 20 people with Vault Boys puppets on their hands, holding them in the air and just waving them back and forth or dancing to the music. And I was like, well, that was an unintended consequence, but that's about as close to wacky or silly as I as I think we've probably as I think we've gotten.
Those puppets are phenomenal.
Yeah, that was a good one. I wasn't expecting that one. I was expecting some kind of like wild contraption you built, not you basically wrote a story about a man going insane and gave 20 people puppets. So good to know.
Okay, we've got another question in the chat. Let's see. Pete, what are you most excited for in regards to the Microsoft acquisition?
That was actually going to be my next question too. So
there you go. 2 for 1. Really, it's all of the different ways in which our teams, specifically starting with development, because look, at the end of the day, we're a video game company. We make video games. And so the better games that we can make, the happier that I am. The more support and tools and resources that our developers have to make their visions come to light, I am all for. And so for me, that is the most important, because look, as somebody who's part of now a first-party platform, we simply get access and insight into a lot of things that, quite honestly, we'd have to wait till later to hear about or find out about. And we can help Xbox as they're thinking about where they're going and what they're doing with where we're going with our games and the kind of features or functionality or things that we want to be able to do with the games that we can ask them to include on, a roadmap for where they're going, whether it's with Xbox, whether it's with xCloud, whether it's with Game Pass, or any number of other things like that. That is really huge for our devs to be able to have that. And then that same phenomenon sort of filters out through the rest of our company as we start to find different ways that we can work together on ideas. Or like I said, like a simple one is research. Like, well, we're doing research and you're doing research. Would you like to see some of ours? We'd like to see some of, you know what I mean? And like,
yeah,
and sort of off we go. So I think those things, again, we're still super early in all of this, but as we start to find those ways, it does get pretty exciting to think about the ways in which that might help and benefit us, our games, and our fans. While we still try and maintain sort of who we are and what we're about as Bethesda, which is trying to push the boundaries of what games can do, not being afraid to take chances and zig when everybody else zags, or those kinds of things. And then obviously, we very much like that while community is at the center of everything that we do, with mods and all the different things we do to interact and support our communities, that's also such a huge thing at Xbox as well. Sort of makes us feel like there's some cool, fun things we should be able to do there as well, including, starting with the roundtable we did a few weeks ago with myself and Aaron Losey and Phil Spencer and Todd Howard and others, like just being able to sit down and have them say, yes, just this unscripted conversation is the right way to do this. Like that, I think those kind of things people really appreciate, sort of just candid conversation as opposed to heavily scripted, polished stuff being the norm.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's been really cool just to see like the initial steps so far of that. I think it was a couple weeks ago, a bunch of Bethesda games were dumped on the Game Pass, is just open stuff, and I think that's been awesome just to see. Like, it's nice to see a partnership that it's kind of immediately taken off, and it's like we're doing stuff now. Like, it's not like you have a long-term plan, but you have these short-term things that you're doing right now. So, and it's really nice to see that. I want to ask though, how does one big game company, how does this deal and acquisition work? Is it just one day Todd Howard rings up, or excuse me, Phil Spencer rings up Todd Howard and goes, "Hey, I want to buy you," and then they're like, "No," and then he presents the price, and it's like, "Hey, we'll do this." Like, how does this work exactly? It's been a mystery.
So I mean, first of all, important to understand that since we have worked so closely with Microsoft for the entire time that I've been at Bethesda, which was really the start of our relationship with Microsoft, if I'm being honest, because we just did PC stuff really predominantly before I got there, and even when I first started. But with Morrowind and working on the Xbox, that was a start. And when you know somebody that long, well, you're going to have conversations along the way. Our chairman and CEO, Robert Altman, who founded ZeniMax, the company that bought Bethesda in early '99, right before I joined, and honestly was the person who really gave Bethesda Softworks a fighting chance to continue to exist and make games, was Robert. Robert was the one who had conversations with Phil Spencer at some point, um, and help put together what that might look like. How many times they talked about this beforehand, I don't know. I am certain over the years it was probably more than once. As some folks probably know, Robert passed away in February, just a month short of the close, which was a real gut punch for all of us because of, he was a lot more than our CEO or chairman. He was our friend. He was our mentor. And he looked out for all of us. And, this deal is really Robert looking out for all of us and making sure that this company, that honestly, guys, through his sheer will, he got to be a success. And that doesn't mean that the rest of us didn't work, incredibly hard and do a lot of really good things along the way. But, you could watch the roundtable videos from the studios and how every studio mentioned Robert. Like, that wasn't us saying, oh, by the way, you should mention Robert. Like, no, that came from them. And we said, we want you to talk about your studio and just who you are and what you're about. That, he was so instrumental to who we were, our DNA as a company. The respect that we expect people to have for each other, the way in which we work together. And so, our company going forward is a living tribute to that man and to what he built. And we are all now, I think more than ever sort of rededicating ourselves to make sure that like we live up to the legacy and to the chance that he gave all of us to be part of Xbox and to do even bigger, more amazing things. So, it's definitely bittersweet, but, at the same time, just super appreciative of this chance and this opportunity and making sure we make the most of it.
It's always good to have good people in leadership roles and their legacies carry on. And that's pretty awesome. So that's cool.
And it's good that you now have this ability to honor Robert with this deal. Like it's nice. It's awesome to see his legacy that he built continue on past what he's done. So I'm excited for it. I remember when I first heard that the partnership was starting and the acquisitions and the back end was going. I was excited because I knew this would be a great opportunity for not only just you, but literally everyone in Bethesda. Like I knew it was going to be an amazing opportunity. So
we're very much looking forward to see all of the things that that we can make happen, of course, while we're also sitting in the beginning of a second year of working from home under COVID, where most of us haven't seen each other in person forever. And look, that's if you're about people, and you really believe that people are your most valuable asset, which I do, and we do, then it only stands to reason that when you don't get to see any of those people for more than a year, it's really difficult, especially when you've seen so many of them for, Erin Losey's been with me she was the first person I hired to help me do marketing, PR, community. She's been with me for over 15 years. She's my vice president of global marketing and comms. And Todd Vaughn and Todd, all of these people that we helped build this company, and overcame all of these hurdles, and just to only be able to talk to them, over a camera is not the same as being able to sit down together, have lunch, play Magic the Gathering. I run the Magic the Gathering leagues at work. I run sealed and draft stuff with, any but QA and finance and dev and it's just super fun way to, catch up with people that you don't normally talk to or have lunch with. And, I miss getting to play Magic the Gathering with all of the folks that I get to see at lunch week after week. Playing matches. So I'm very much looking forward to seeing all of them again and being able to reconnect, because I think that's so central to who we are as a company.
Yeah, it always.
That was actually.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
That was actually going to be an audience question that I can't remember who asked it, but they were asking essentially, what's it been like for a major company like Bethesda to kind of move from physical to distance? Like how's it been? What have been the struggles, and have you been coping well with it?
Well, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there. It's a good question. First of all, I think that the thing that I appreciate most about our company is that we were pretty quick to get everybody home, when it was clear that we needed to make sure everybody was safe first and foremost. And so we went from nobody working at home to everybody working at home in the matter of a couple of weeks, thanks to the folks in facilities and human resources, and especially IT. Like our IT, we have the best IT team on the planet. I'm not even kidding. They are the actual best. And Steve Bloom and his team, I mean, they moved mountains to get an entire company of people set up and working from home, in so many ways that just doesn't seem complicated. But when you're talking about dev teams who are working off of Perforce and pushing code and needing to, to get a new build of a game, and you start to contemplate what does that look like across all of these studios worldwide, like, oh my God, it's such an undertaking. And they managed to pull it off. And as I said earlier, obviously we go slower. You're downloading stuff at home over internet. You're not downloading it at network speed. When you need to download the latest, when you need to download the latest build, and that's not just true for our devs. It's true for QA. Like, it just slows down all of those times, and it may not seem like a big deal. Oh well, I have really fast. I have gigabyte internet. How long could it take? Like, well, when it takes 2 hours instead of 5 minutes, or it takes 45 minutes instead of 5 minutes, like, that's a pretty massive time sink right there. That's a significant, it's a 9-time increase and how long it's taking you just to download that build. And that's 40 minutes that you probably would have started doing something with that build, that now you can't do that, and you're having to like find something else to do to fill the time. It's just that cycle, and the ability to rev builds, get people to test, do bug regression to see, did the things that we thought we fixed last time actually get fixed, and or did we figure out some new way to break that you didn't account for, and then getting that to a programmer or an artist or a designer who then fixes it, pushes a build for the, like, when all of the every step of that build downloading goes slower, like, you're just not operating at peak. But I think we've tried to do as much as we can to support our teams, in a variety of different ways. I think our teams have gotten pretty creative. I've seen talent shows and different ways that we do team meetings, happy hours, and a number of different things. But look, at the end of the day, we are trying as best as we can to come up with ways to keep everybody focused as much as possible, but also realizing, Ben, and this is the big part of it, which is I constantly remind folks, this is not what work from home looks like, right? Work from home looks like everybody else in the world is doing what they would normally be doing on that day, and you're at home working. Not you and your kids and your wife are all home in the house together for 365 days in a row. Or you live by yourself and you don't have a roommate, and you are by yourself in that apartment or condo or wherever you are like, that is not work from home. That's working from home under a quarantine, and it's very different, and it takes a real mental toll. And I will tell you something that I constantly reiterate to my teams, that I want to reiterate to both of you and to everybody else, which is the importance of checking in on how you're doing from a mental health perspective, and making sure, especially if you have a job, that you're taking mental health days when you really feel like you need a break. I took one on Friday and emailed my team and said, I'm taking a mental health day today. And I told them in the department meeting afterwards, like, I'm not taking a mental health day because I'm having a really bad day. I took a mental health day because I noticed that I was feeling really ground down and just mentally exhausted, because that push to the deal close announce, and that round table and the video that we put together, which is one of my favorite things that we've ever done, and every written piece of communication that went out, like, it was like another E3 week. And I realized I needed to give myself a break and take the day, and I ran some errands with my wife and sat outside in the sunshine, and it did wonders for me. And I just don't think enough people recognize just how difficult the ask is in these times, and making sure that they're practicing good self-care and checking in on themselves. In addition to Bethesda, by the way, I'm also on the board of Take This, which is a mental health awareness and education nonprofit focused on the video game industry. And this is a big thing for Take This, which is like understanding the different ways in which your mental health can be affected or impacted, and knowing and understanding the ways in which you can address that, whether it's speaking with a therapist, whether it's taking a mental health day or talking to others. We just don't want people thinking that mental health is a thing that you can't talk about publicly. And I think a big underlying factor through this COVID is definitely one of mental health, and one I just want to bring up to folks in this moment, not just as it relates to our company, but any business or just person, student, whomever it is. Like, hey, this is not easy, and don't forget to remind yourself of that, and to give yourself a break when you really need one.
100% will echo those comments, and that's something that I've been doing the pandemic. My sister gets annoyed at me because I text her every day, "You doing okay?" And I'm like, I'm not doing this to just be the annoying brother. I'm doing it because I actually want to check in on you. So, but that's awesome. Can you talk a little bit more about Take That? Because I didn't even know that was something you had done.
Sure. So it's called Take This. Our website is takethis.org. And it was started by Russ Pitts and Susan Arendt, both of whom were and one at least still is a journalist in the game industry. And they did this after a colleague, a journalist of theirs, took his own life some years ago. And they realized that just not enough was being done to reduce the stigma around mental health, right? It's a pretty common thing that if you broke your leg, you'd have no problem telling people I broke my leg, or, I was skiing accident and broke my arm. And or I had a cold. But somehow when we talk about mental health and saying, I deal with depression, I deal with anxiety, whatever it is. Both of those things, by the way, are things that I deal with. That there's some notion that those aren't okay to talk about. And as a result, it tends to make it even worse, because not only are you dealing with whatever that thing is, which is hard enough in and of itself, but then you feel like there's really nobody that you can talk to, or nothing that you can do about it because, well, we're not supposed to. And Take This is all about changing that dynamics, again, specifically within our industry, to say, look, it's okay not to be okay. Like, having mental health issues is not, you need to understand that you're not the only one going through this, that all of us do. 1 out of 3 folks, in our industry, can be impacted by mental health, and not just our developers and employees, but our players and fans, which Take This is interested in mental health across the board, both for our employees and making sure that we're having, healthy work environments for our employees, but also healthy play environments for our players. And so I'm the senior board member there. It's a wonderful group of folks from across the industry. We have folks from the ESA, companies all across the industry, from a variety of different backgrounds, that have given of themselves and their time to say, hey, this is really important. And in almost every case, an issue that not only has affected us personally, but people we know. And, honestly, we just want to help make things better. And I think that's an important thing to do.
Oh, without a doubt, that is important. We have a lot of students, especially since the pandemic began, who go through their days where they just need a day off, and it's always been encouraged just to email your professor, just tell them that that you're just having a day, and everybody works with everybody. But I had a good friend who recently was just like, I need to go talk to somebody. I said, well, great. We've got places on campus you can go. It doesn't cost really anything at all. They're great people. And he had always been kind of holding that stigma that holding it in and trying to deal with it yourself was like a good route to go, when it never really is. But for people who don't know, if you're ever thinking about going to a therapist, there are wonderful ways of, and if you need an analogy here, of just loosening that valve of all that anxiety and tension that you got, and just spilling it out, and then trying to reorganize how to process it. It's a wonderful experience, and nothing you should be embarrassed or ashamed of doing.
For sure. Look, the vast majority of us are not gearheads. So when our car stops working, we tend not to try and fix it to ourselves. We go to somebody and say, my car isn't running. I turn the key and nothing happens. Will you please fix my car? I would would say that your brain is significantly more important than your car, and I don't know why you would have an issue with getting some help with the most important, or at least one of the most important parts of your body to say, you know, I'm feeling upset, I'm feeling frustrated, whatever it is, and speaking to somebody who is an expert and can help you understand why you're going through that. And again, Nathan, just to build on what you said, part of what Take This does is to say, if somebody reaches out to you, or you think you might have a friend or a family member who is showing signs of dealing with mental health issues, here's what you can do, or here's resources you can point them to in terms of, well, how do I find a therapist or whatever. So just something, again, I encourage folks to look into, and whether it's for yourself or somebody else, because I promise you, whether you know it or not, you know somebody who's dealing with mental health issues.
Absolutely.
I mean, and I second everything you all said, and genuinely, it's such an important thing. As someone who literally has told people that my therapist has saved my life, I genuinely mean that. So please, if you need help, don't be afraid of the stigmas. Please reach out to people. So, and
Super important.
Thank you for starting, and thank you for being a part of something like that. It's super important in the games industry, because I feel like there is still a lot of stigma, especially in the games industry, it seems, of stuff like that. So thank you for being a part of that and creating that, and being a leading light in that sense. So I do want to shift gears a little bit, though.
Okay.
I'm going to ask this, and we kind of already got the answer to it. The future for Bethesda, what does it look like? Is it bright? Is it dark? Is there a nice little living room in that house that you're moving into with Microsoft? Like, what does it look like?
Look, I am super excited about, I have the benefit of getting to know pretty much like everything. Like, what is that studio making, and what is that studio thinking about making after the thing that they're making? And I am super excited about where our studios are at and what they're working on. You know, there are bigger picture, longer term things that we as a company think about in terms of where we want to be. But you know, when folks ask me like, well, what do you want the future to look like, or whatever, my thing is always, I want to try and make the best version of whatever thing we're working on with the studio. I want that to be the best version possible, and I want to work on it in a way that is like positive. But the way that I say this to my team all the time is, the way that we get there is just as important as getting there. Meaning, I have worked on games that were really great games, but the process of getting there was a nightmare in terms of whether people were sharing information, or, you know, giving people time to react and get feedback. And I've worked on games that were not particularly good, but at least the things that we did and the way that we got there was very healthy and productive, because that is so important to being able to build off of that for the next game. If you ship an amazing game, but you're all ready to throttle each other, you're not exactly in a great space to go make a game that's even better than the last one, right? So you need to get to that finish line, you know, in sort of a better place than you started it. Otherwise, you don't really have a whole lot to build off of for the next one. So for me, I'm just looking forward to, you know, our teams and the things that I know they're already working on, and then the ways in which those things might get even better with whatever additional support and resources we're able to bring. But honestly, if you didn't bring another resource to any of them, I'm super excited about all of them. Like, I was excited about all of them before the Xbox acquisition. So now with that sort of additional help, I just think it's that much bigger and brighter. But we'll see. Look, at the end of the day, Ben, talk is cheap. And by the way, talk is what I do. So I'm saying these words that you're hearing, this is all cheap. It doesn't mean anything. At the end of the day, it comes down to exactly one thing, which is, how good's the game, right? Great trailers, cool box art, this and that, nice website, interesting, quirky marketing thing. Nobody gives a shit if the game isn't good. So my focus is always, as much as possible, not just what is the marketing stuff, but making sure that we're all working together, so that the game and the marketing are in sync. The marketing is trying to represent and show the things that we think are best and coolest about the game. But at the end of the day, it's still the game, stupid. And if the game is really good, people will be really happy with us. And when it's not, I assure you, they tell us.
Yes.
No way.
By the way, they tell us. They tell me.
Yes, they do.
I've heard from friends just because Nathan obviously runs the game site. I've heard when they reviewed 76, just the crap that he got. I can only imagine what it was like for you all. So
it was just so much fun.
Was it?
You see, I got it on like a 0.001 scale of what you get it on. So that's that's people hunted me down on Facebook. That was so great.
But here's the thing, Nathan, which is look, I will definitely say if we had to do it all over again, we would definitely do it different. No question. A lot of lessons learned and things in retrospect that, well, we should have noticed this and we should have noticed that. Todd talked about this, said it better than I could in the roundtable. Having said that, though, the important thing that I take away from that is the following, which is, one, I don't work at a company that's a bunch of quitters. We don't just throw our hands up when something doesn't work and say it's too hard, give up and move on. Because that's not how we're wired. Like, you don't just, if you're really passionate about it and you really believe in it, then you stick with it and you keep at it and you make it the good thing that you told everybody it was going to be, and you listen to their feedback and you continually fix and improve it and you don't stop at that. That's super important. And the other thing is, you never let something like that dissuade you from taking chances, right? We always knew this is a massive risk. This is a studio that has never done a multiplayer thing. They're known for single player open world RPGs, but they said, we want to try something different. This is new and it's scary for us. But if you're not prepared to deal with bumps and missteps, then you're probably in the wrong business in the first place. Like, all of this doesn't mean to me what I hear some people say, which is, well, you should have never made Fallout 76. Well, I disagree. And the reason I disagree is the studio really wanted to do it and they wanted to try something they'd never done before. And that's good enough for me. Like, I believe that the folks who spend every day of their lives making these games have a major say in what it is that they're working on, more than me, more than the community at large. They're not vending machines that you just press an Elder Scrolls button and get them to shoot out 6, 7, 8, 9 every 2 years. And let's be clear, we've never even come remotely close to spitting an Elder Scrolls game out every 2 years. No. So
and don't start expecting it now.
And the clock is still running on that as well. Believe me, nobody knows that more than me. But at the same time, you got to support folks and their vision and what they want to do.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Like, when we reviewed 76, we actually gave it the highest score Metacritic, and our reviewer was like, "I can see where it's going. Like, I understand that the roadmap's there, and I don't understand why other people can't see it." And I was like, "Well, good luck, Mike. Nobody will ever tell us that we're terrible for writing good things." And yeah, that was wrong. But I get it. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, some of the games that we review on our end, we can absolutely see like the structure and the bones there, and we know that it's going to be a process. I mean, No Man's Sky is a good example of that, where it came out the way it came out, and then 2 years later, it's a phenomenal game, and it just had good bones to start on. So
well, and we've had that experience, right? When we took the Elder Scrolls Online and had Zoss create an MMO version in this beloved franchise. A lot of the same things in terms of that PC launch, and it wasn't what folks liked or wanted, and there was a lot of feedback and criticism, and we didn't throw up our hands and go, well, that didn't work. We said, what do we have to fix? What do we have to do? And look, that MMO is a freight train, and it's only down to one thing, which is like, are you going to quit and give up, or are you going to do what's required, which is just a bunch of hard work? Like, and not just a day of it or a week of it. Like, no, you're signing up for years of hard work. But if we're good at what we do, if we're as good as we think we are, then we can turn this around. And I think in both cases we have. Now, don't get me wrong. In both cases, I would have far preferred that we got it perfectly right in the first time. Sure. But it's not up to me. Like, I don't code. And by the way, it would have been them as well. Like, it's life, folks. Like, you learn lessons as you go. Everything doesn't always go perfect. It's really a question of what are you going to do then? And I think that's really where where your character gets revealed. And are you the kind of person that I want to be in the trenches with trying to fix stuff, or are you just pointing fingers at everybody else and saying, so we worked really hard. My team worked really hard with 76 and talking about, here's the feedback of the community. How are we addressing these things? What are we going to say on this? What are we, trying to improve our transparency, trying to improve our feedback loop, the playtest server stuff that we set up, all of those things was a collaborative effort across the whole publishing org, and something I'm honestly, while I don't love how it started, I loved how we responded across the company. I'm super proud of the people I work with and how much work they did to address all those things.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think the biggest moral is you didn't give up, you didn't quit, and I think that's awesome that you've been able to continue on with 76 and stuff like that. So, but our time is coming to a close soon, so I do have two things, Pete, I do want to ask. Or one thing is a statement, and the other thing is a question. Okay. So I will be expecting my contract in the mail soon, or either via email. I have the ability to do it. I got the suit. I'll pack up right now and move over to them. But
noted.
My final question, kind of a two-parter. What has been your favorite personal game that you've ever played? And what are you playing right now? XCOM. Okay. And what are you playing right now?
What am I playing right now? Well, we just mentioned Slay the Spire. I'm playing a lot of Slay the Spire. I blame Phil Spencer for that, because when we did the roundtable, he mentioned that game. He's like, "Have you tried this yet? It's really good." And then I tried it, and now I'm completely addicted to it, because it's a card game that does deck building on the fly, which is my favorite thing to do. So I am playing the hell out of that. I still have to finish Spider-Man, Miles Morales. I was playing some Cyberpunk. I understand they have a big update coming out. I will probably jump back into that once that comes out. I have not played 76 in a while. I took a big break from that, partially because every time I logged in, people were finding me, and then I was just getting level 400 people in power armor, killing everything in front of me before I could even do anything. And I was like, well, this isn't all that fun. Now we changed the way the game works and how it works with people of different levels. And so I've been meaning to jump back in and have it. But I sort of browse, and then I still play, I have a senior in high school and a senior in college, and games is how we connect. So we play Rocket League, which I'm pretty terrible at, but they're pretty good at. So we play Rocket League together, and Overwatch. I don't know, whatever we're in the mood for playing.
I'm glad to see I'm not the only one that joins online lobbies just to get my head curb stomped by level 400 players. Right. It's a nice little thing. So, but Pete, do you have any final closing thoughts for the audience or anything at all?
No. Thank you both for having me on. Thanks for everybody who tuned in to watch, and go Wildcats.
Thank you very much.
And go Deeks.
Oh, there it is. I knew it was coming. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Pete, it's been a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to do these. Thank you, everyone who tuned in. We appreciate your time. Have a great rest of your day. And also, if you are a student on campus, you're probably eligible to get vaccinated right now, in which case, please register at vaccine.ukhc.org. Get your vaccines, kids. It's important.
Do it.
Please. Thank you so much for your time. Have a great rest of your day.
See you.
Bye.